So is this a little better if I ring a bell rather than screech the microphone? So if you please stand, we're going to thank our greeter, Gail Weaver. She's out there somewhere. Did it solo today. She became a member in 2014 and was in healthcare consulting. So thank you, Gail. Our invocation today, Russ Wilkinson, father of Riley, who we loved having at the paver project yesterday. Thank you.
Thank you, President Rick, and welcome all Rotary members, as well as friends. Sorry about that. The word I have today is gratitude. The concept of gratefulness and unhappiness do not belong in the same sense. And restated, unhappiness as far as and gratefulness cannot be in the same. And so I know over the years, as far as just been really always interested in how one can grow in life. And one of the things that, is I think really important is this concept of gratefulness. And as we approach each meal, it's amazing how if we as a habit get into the concept of being grateful for the meal, it can sometimes kind of retune the day, whatever you're going through at the moment, to peg a change in attitude as you sit down to the meal. And so with that in mind, let's pray. Thank you, God, for the sunshine we all woke up to this morning. Thank you for life and for all the opportunities you bring to us each and every day. Thank you for all of our amazing members who give so much to our community and the world. Thank you also for our soldiers, past and present, and those in the room today. Please now bless this amazing food we are able to nourish our body with. Please also bless those who have prepared this food, along with those serving us in the room today. Thank you, God, also for loving us and bringing so much hope to a hurting world. Amen.
Yes, you may be seated. Though now that everyone is seated, I would like to welcome our guests today. And if you wouldn't mind standing again so that we can acknowledge your presence here. Thank you for joining us. And very nice. Thank you for coming today. Well, the first thing I would like to do is to have a Rotary Foundation moment. And there's going to be an award as a result of it, but I want to give you just a little description of the Rotary Foundation. It helps Rotary members to advance world peace understanding, goodwill, and peace by improving health, providing quality education, improving the environment, and alleviating poverty. One of the biggest initiatives of the foundation is polio eradication. Our club has donated to the Rotary Polio Plus campaign on behalf of each of our speakers this year. Rotary members can individually contribute a specified amount to the foundation quarterly or any amount anytime. Today, I have the pleasure to present a special award for generous giving to the Rotary Foundation by members of our club. So I'm going to ask Terry and Jennifer Bleasner to come forward as I have a crystal award that represents a cumulative donation of $10,000 to the Rotary Foundation. So special thanks to Terry and Jennifer for your generosity towards Rotary and the Rotary Foundation, which spreads goodwill and peace and understanding and improving health all around the world. So Rick Pennell, if you are ready, you have a new member to present to us today. And just so you know, Rick Pennell came into the club in 1974. He's a past president, one of a father-son combination of presidents, and he's been in the business mentoring and consulting business for how many years since you retired? 20. Okay, 20.
It's my really honor today on so many levels, and I'm so passionate about what I'm introducing this person to, and her name is Magali Solis. My passion has always been very deep for Heritage University and La Casa Hogar, which I've been involved in both for decades at different roles. So it means a lot to me to introduce Magali. And just to kind of set the pace with Magali, in 2020, Magali was distinguished with the Heritage University Violet Lumley Raw Alumna of the Year. For those of you that may not know, Violet is a Yakima native. She was one of the founders of Heritage University along with Sister Kathleen Ross, who is here today. Magali was awarded for her service to the Latino immigrant community in the Yakima Valley. Magali grew up in the paradise, as she put down, along the Pacific Ocean in Guerrero, Mexico. She immigrated to the Yakima Valley with no English skills to the United States as a teenager to join her family in Mapton. Magali is a proud farm worker parent, proud of her farm worker parents, a first-generation immigrant, and a DACA recipient. She graduated from Mapton High School and later attended Heritage, where she got her BA in education. During her college years, to help pay for that, she was a medical interpreter in Toppenish. I think that's amazing since you're in college and didn't speak a word of English when you came here as a teenager, so you're a quick learner. Magali has worked for La Casa Hogar for 8 years and currently serves as the executive director. Magali is the first Latina executive director of La Casa Hogar. La Casa Hogar has a dynamic team of 18 staff members and countless volunteers. Their mission is to offer connection and educational opportunities to the first-generation immigrants through education, early learning, citizenship, and legal services. If you've never been to La Casa, please take a time and go, but make sure don't just look at La Casa. Meet the students. That's what you're going to learn, what La Casa does. Their programs are designed to teach new skills while developing a sense of belonging, self-confidence, and self-empowerment to transform their lives and community. Now, a fun fact about Magali, that she has summited Mount Adams 4 times, Mount Rainier and Mount Hood 1 time. Through mountaineering, Magali has really became a deeper understanding and connection with the Pacific Northwest. Magali recently got married to David, a lawyer. Is he here today? Okay, well, David, you would have had to stand right now. They both enjoy being active in the community. In free time, they enjoy visiting many national parks. Please welcome Magali Solis.
Well, welcome, Magali. That is a pretty impressive introduction, I have to say. We're pleased to have you as a new member, and because you are a new member, you get to receive the following items. A Rotary plaque for your wall in your office or home or wherever. A red badge, which you get to trade for a blue badge once you go through the Rotary education process, which is not too tedious, and we grade pretty easily. This is a roster of membership, and I know you've been looking for this. Probably seen it on the back of many cars. Service above self, Rotary license plate holder. Thank you, Magali. All right, I see Craig Mendenhall knows that he's next, and he's on his way. He is a past president of Rotary. He was, that was in 2009, 2010, and his classification, retirement planning. Craig.
So as Rick said, I was president in 2009, and at that time we had 12 people in this club who had been members for over 50 years, which, when you think about it, that's a long time. That's a lot of Thursdays. And these were modest people, but they had really interesting life stories. And it occurred to me that many of the newer members at that time had no idea who they were visiting with at lunch and sharing some stories. And so I went to our board and said, why don't we create an award that would recognize a lifetime of service to our country, service to our state, service to our county, service to our city, service to our community, and of course, service to Rotary. The first recipient was Herb Frank. Is Bunker here today? Hey, there's Bunker. So anyway, Bunker's father-in-law. And some of you may remember that when he was doing his classification talk, it went so long they gave him the hook, and off he went. And he came back the following week without missing a beat. It was kind of like, here was the middle of a sentence, and he started right where he left off and continued it for another 5 or so minutes. Other persons in order who have received this award, and we call it the First Citizen Award, were Dick Marble, Dr. Doug Corcoran, Mel Wagner, Congressman Sid Morrison, Jack Bloxham, a member of this club for 64 years, Marv Sundquist, Bob Schultz, Don Moen, Rod McIntosh, Ken Smith, Dr. Bob Mather, 53 years of perfect attendance, Harry Hellison right down here. Ollie Nelson, Bob Redmond, Esther Huey, Greta Bryan, Monsignor Eckert, I saw him, he's over here somewhere. Okay, there he is. Dr. Jim Abendhaus, Steve Altmaier, and Jim Smith. Today it's my pleasure to announce that Rick Pennell will be joining this august group. So Rick was born and reared in Yakima. As a youth, Rick spent his Saturdays at the YMCA boxing and such. And this began his lifelong love and his relationship with the Y. He's been on the board forever. He's a past president of the Y. Mary Jo's been very involved at the Y. They've got Y blood in them. After Rick graduated from Ike, he went to WSU. He's a Sigma Nu there. And then he went on to Vietnam, where he was a lieutenant for a number of years. When he was honorably discharged, he made his way to San Francisco, where he met Mary Jo. And Mary Jo was living with a couple other flight attendants, which of course were not called flight attendants at that time. And Rick kept trying to bum dinners at her place, and she said, "You're not coming to dinner until you get a job." And so Rick eventually got a job with Dictaphone, and his territory, everybody had a territory, sales territory, was about 2 square blocks in downtown San Francisco. So anyway, he and Mary Jo moved back to town, and they started their really lifetime commitment to community service here. Rick grew up as a Rotarian. His father, George, was president of this club in 1965. Rick was president in 1988, and his brother, Jim, which is here somewhere, right there, was president of Sunrise in 1994. Rick, along with a handful of other Rotarians, came up with the idea of purchasing the land and the houses around Kiwanis Park to do what today is now the Gateway Project. And that was a marvelous idea, and it really cleaned up that side of town and made a wonderful sporting event. In addition to that, he was the impetus behind the creation of what we now know of as the Yakima Rotary Trust. Initially, it was just for this club, but it's incorporated both of the other 2 clubs. As you know, our weekly programs are an important part of our Rotary experience, and Rick has served on that committee, the program committee, more times than anyone else. Over the years, Rick has worked on many United Way campaigns and training programs. Rick was an early supporter, as he mentioned, of La Casa Hogar. Rick served for 20 years on the Heritage University and also as a past chair. And recently, his connection with the Catholic Church, Rick co-chaired the event that raised $350,000 for Monsignor Eckert's trust. Rick and Mary Jo have one daughter, Nicole, two grandchildren, Dalton and Julian. Rick is another reason why Yakima Rotary is the finest Rotary Club in America. Congratulations, Rick.
I knew he couldn't pass on the microphone.
I thought all my friends were here for Newhouse.
Well, Rick Pinnell, a very well-deserved award. And somewhere there might be a plaque or something that could be forthcoming. Is that correct? Maybe, yes. But you were a little surprised by all your friends here, right? Yeah. And your brother. Okay. All right. Next up, we have Leanne Antonio. She's been a member since 2008. She is the chair of our Allocation and Review Committee and a Classification Federal Savings and Loan, and she's here to award some Rotary grants.
Thank you, President Rick. Fellow Rotarians, so as Rick said, I'm Leanne Antonio. I'm the chair of the Rotary Allocations and Review Committee, and the role of the Allocations and Review Committee is to review grant requests received by Yakima Rotary and then to make recommendations to the Yakima Rotary Club Board for awards. With today's awards, our club has provided $30,000 in grant funding during the 2022-2023 Rotary year. So it's my pleasure today to award checks for the final 3 grant recipients. First up is the Interact Club of Eisenhower High School. They're receiving a $1,000 grant award for startup funding to establish Cadet Closet. This is a hygiene item pantry to be located on the Eisenhower High School campus. The funds will be used to purchase clear totes to hold donated items and to purchase items such as toothbrushes, toothpaste, deodorant, body wash, shampoo, laundry soap, socks, and underwear. So Eisenhower High School school counselor and Interact Club advisor Lisa Acosta is here to accept the grant along with club president Gio Fuentes. Okay, next up, we have a grant to Yakima Rotary Food Bank. This is $5,000 award towards the cost of installing a fence around the covered area to the south side of the food bank building to allow moving pallets, boxes, and other non-food supplies outside, which will create more space inside to store food. Yakima Rotarian, Yakima Rotary Food Bank Board Chair and dedicated volunteer Pete Bansmer is accepting this award. Okay, last but not least, we have funds for United Way of Central Washington. So this is a $1,500 additional grant award to support the startup funding of Imagination Library to improve kindergarten readiness in Yakima County. This is being combined with $6,000 in previous grant funding through Allocations and Review and the Literacy Committee. Imagination Library provides a free age-appropriate book each month to children ages 0 to 5 years to help children become kindergarten ready during their early learning years. Communities across the nation with an active Imagination Library program have seen increases in kindergarten readiness indicators after the program launched. The United Way 5-year goal is to reach 6% enrollment of eligible children in Yakima County, equaling around 11,740 children. I think that's 60% of enrollment. So, Yakima Rotarian Executive Director of United Way of Central Washington, Kayleen Stiles, is accepting this grant award today.
So I'd just like to give a special thanks to Leanne for chairing the committee this year and getting them together, reviewing all the grants, making what I think are great decisions, and we've seen the results this year. So thank you, Leanne, and your committee. In the wings. In the wing here on my right is our Sergeant of Arms today, Kelly Connaughton. She's been a member since 2005. She's a president from Rotary President, 2017-18. And her classification is nonprofit consulting, and I think that's mainly for what we call the Yakima Greenway. Kelly.
Yeah, I'll just tell you whatever you want to know. I'll just make it up as we go when it's nonprofits. That's what that all means. Okay, so this is the best program of the year as far as I'm concerned with the classification talk. So I want to get on with that. So this is going to be down and dirty. Everybody just get out your money. Hey, Brad. Get out your money. We're all going to be ready to roll here because we're going to talk about the marketplace, which is a picture of right here. So who has not yet been down to lift and set a paver? If you have not, pay a buck. And I got my cast off last week, so I am going to be paying because I haven't been down there either. Now, since Rick Pinnell was introduced or inducted into the Ancient Rotarian Hall of Fame today, it just adds one more person that can actually answer maybe a couple of his historical questions. So all you ancient Rotarians, get your dollars out right now. What the site of the marketplace, before it was the marketplace, before it was Track 29, before it was Memorial Hospital's parking lot, what was it? Hellison Lumber. That was on the other side. This side, where the market is. Anybody, ancient Rotarians? Yesterday's Village is in the old Track 29 shopping center, but that's not what it was. All right, dollars collected, here we go. It used to be a rail yard and freight house for Northern Pacific. Pay your buck. John Ball has been working on this project, and this is a random question. Shout out if you know the answer. How long has John Ball been working on this project? 3 years, 3 months, 7 days. If you did not know that, I'm shocked there's not minutes on here and seconds. That's how anxious he is to get this done. Who can tell us, besides the three amigos who have been down there for 24/7 since we started, and the three amigos are Brad Kessinger, Jim DeGrasse, Sig Fossum, and somebody said Nancy Leahy did 2 full pallets by herself? Seriously? What a rock star. So, other than these guys, who I know exactly how long this thing is, how long is the new marketplace in length? Come on. Brad, do you know? Oh, come on. You've laid almost every paver down there. How could you not know that? 100 pallets long. Good guess, Jim. 350 feet long is that. And how many, you two, how many pavers does 100 pallets total? Nope. The 350 feet will be covered in 12,000 pavers. If you didn't know that answer, pay a buck. It feels like 30. That would make sense. And yeah, Brad, and I can tell you've been down there from the calluses on your hands too. So, fake news. Give me a break. All right, last question, and this is an important one, and it's pretty fantastic and amazing, frankly. To date, how much has been raised for this fantastic feature that our community is going to benefit from in a couple of weeks from now when Marketplace goes there? How much money collectively has been raised to make this happen? Any guesses? 1.2 is close. 1.373. $1,373,018. We are just shy of $330,000 of hitting the goal to get this project completely paid for and done. So if any of you have a spare check in your wallet today and would like to pay, a little donation, that would be greatly appreciated, I'm sure. And congratulations, John, and all of you Rotarians for help making this happen.
Actually, looks like the Sergeant of Arms had a good day today, as the collection is still taking place and delivered to Carolyn for counting and accounting. But thank you, Kelly, and thanks for talking about the marketplace. I've been down there a few days myself, and I was kind of impressed that I could last the time that I spent there with all those pavers. But you know, Carolyn's been down there for 4 days, or I don't know how many days, and seeing her lift those and carry them, how could I not keep up? I had to. All right. So our program today is a classification talk from 3 of our members, and I know I'm supposed to introduce them, but you know, the tutor. How many read the tutor this week? Okay, most of you. So the descriptions of each of our speakers today was so good, I couldn't come up with anything better. So I'm going to quickly read what was in the tutor, just to refresh your memory when you read it, or if you hadn't read, this is what it said. We have Pete Bansmer, who joined Rotary on January 19th, 1995. He retired after many years as the president of Yakima Federal Savings and Loan. He remains an active, vital part of our community, exemplifying a life of service through his dedication to the Yakima Rotary Food Bank, which we just saw an award today received by Pete. His service on many local boards and his longtime volunteerism with Rotary Operation Harvest. Rotary Operation Harvest started when? In the 1980s sometime? Anybody remember the date? 1985? Who put the maps together in 1985? I remember that. Our next speaker, Sunny Cameron, joined Rotary on August 27, 2009. She received a bachelor's degree in business administration and management from Washington State University. She is the owner-president of SKC Consulting, LLC, serving Central Washington as an owner's representative for commercial construction projects. And I just know that Sunny was an instrumental part of the construction of the Rotary YMCA Aquatic Center. Mary McFadden, our third speaker, is the most recent Rotarian of the group, having been introduced less than a year ago on August 18th. Mary was born in Mexico and grew up in the Yakima Valley. She and her husband Tim moved back to Yakima after 35 years and are co-owners of Health Within Wellness, offering a unique integrated approach to healthcare. Now, Mary, I chose because I asked a question at our flower arranging project. Right at the end of it, I said, whose mother had the most children? And I heard this, 12! And I thought, there's got to be a story there. So there's a lot more to just the number of children, but how she has made her way to Yakima. So I am not going to say any more. I'm going to invite Pete Bansmer, because we decided that the initials Bansmer, B, C, M, okay, we could go in that order, or we could go by length of membership, but it was the same order. So, Pete, you're up.
Thank you. As Rick said, I'm Pete Bansmer. I was born in New York. My mother immigrated from England, became an RN. My father was born in Jamaica, New York, to German immigrants. They were never allowed to speak English at home, so when he started public school, he could not speak any English. He managed to master the language and got his medical degree from Columbia University. After my father was discharged from the Army at the end of the war, he looked for a new position, and he was offered a job by the startup in Seattle called Group Health Hospital. they offered him $500 a month to come. One of the interesting stories, my father was in his 30s when he became chief of staff there. They signed a contract with Boeing to provide health care, and they were immediately, all of the doctors in the hospital were thrown out of the AMA for practicing socialized medicine. There was a court case for that. My father then moved the family to Grandview, Washington, took over a medical practice from an old doctor. He always wanted to practice socialized medicine. And my father wasn't much of a businessman. He was a great doctor because a lot of the time we'd receive slaughtered pig or eggs in lieu of payment. We moved back to Seattle so my father could get his board certification as a surgeon, and then back to Grandview where I graduated from high school. I started my college career in California, and the lack of parental supervision, the social aspect, and the ability to surf at Santa Cruz at any time had a very negative effect upon my studies. I moved back to Washington, and with my brother, we went to work for Guy F. Atkinson. I became a card-carrying pile buck, which is a heavy construction carpenter. During this time, I mastered some building skills, and about 1969, I went to Yakima Federal to apply for a spec construction loan and was turned down. And I'll get to that a little bit later. I then went back to school, and I finished my Bachelor of Science in Mathematics from Central Washington State College, currently known as Central Washington University. In 1971, Boeing had laid off all of the mathematicians and statisticians that flooded the job market. So I got a job as a teller up in Ellensburg at Yakima Federal. And it surprises the auditing department when I say that back then we could operate the branch without electricity. You could come in, make a deposit, make a loan payment without any electricity because we installed our first teller terminals in June of 1971. They could do a simple deposit or withdrawal from a savings account. And today, with Leanne's guidance, you can get a loan with your telephone or move money. So the sophistication in the banking industry has grown tremendously. I've been a teller, loan closer, loan officer, auditor, and treasurer. And I alluded to the fact that I applied for a construction loan at Yakima Federal. The gentleman's name was Jim Cowan in Sunnyside. He states he doesn't remember doing that. He became my friend, and I became his supervisor. I retired from Yakima Federal in 2008, so I've been retired for a full 15 years. I took over as chairman of the board, a position that I have to relinquish this year because of my age and state banking regulations. I joined Rotary in 1995, and at that time, all new members were assigned to Operation Harvest, and I've been on Operation Harvest ever since, and I've enjoyed all of the different people I've gotten to work with. Currently, as Rick said, I chair the board of the Yakima Rotary Food Bank, which we would love to have more volunteers down there. The majority of us are in our 70s, so you're not too old to work there. I'm currently the treasurer for the Foundation of Central Washington, or United Way of Central Washington. But this club has been very good to me. It has brought us a lot of business. Just this last year, I had 2 members call me to, even though I've been away from the day-to-day activity, to arrange loans for them, single family and even a church loan. My hobbies are woodworking, car collecting, vintage motorcycles, and hiking. I've been 2 years ago with Jordan Matson and Dave Brown. We used my shop to build 195 desks for kids. I think it was at Adams School. So Rotary's been a great experience. I've made a lot of friends, got a lot of business contacts, and I'd like to thank Rotary for the opportunity to be a member. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, President Rick, and thank you, fellow Rotarians and guests. I'm honored to be here today as part of the program to share my classification talk. I told President Rick when he called me that I didn't know how interesting this will be, but he insisted there's got to be a story behind my career in construction. This has been a fun exercise, actually, compiling many projects, and then I recalled a presentation that I did to the Ellensburg Rotary Club in 2015 to the construction management students at Central Washington. So I've cut and pasted and updated a little bit, so we'll see how this goes. When I was just a baby and my brother was a toddler, my dad, Jerry Aldrich, who graduated in the first class of construction management at the University of Washington, started his own business in 1972. It started in our garage in North Seattle. Mom was the bookkeeper. When I got home from school, I would go out to the office in the garage and say, "Hi, I'm home." I grew up visiting job sites. I was young enough, I remember going to a Ballard metal shop, and I was young enough, I was rattling around in the car with my dad. I didn't have any shoes, so when I got there, Daryl Brecky, I'll never forget it, made me shoes out of duct tape so that I could walk around the metal shop. The business eventually moved out of the garage, and it relocated. My father renovated a church in Bothell, and that is where the current company still resides. That's the corporate office is still in Bothell. As soon as I could drive, I was the weekend cleaning lady. I delivered paychecks, after school support for the admin staff, and I learned to do takeoffs. Okay. In high school, I was already pre-qualified to go to the University of Washington Construction Management School, but I wanted to get all my prerequisites done while getting my college experience. I didn't want to live at home. I wanted to go and live in a dorm and whatnot. So Wazoo at the time, unbelievably, seemed too big. And so I didn't want to go to University of Washington. I didn't want to go to Wazoo because I thought it was too big. My brother was playing his senior year on a football scholarship to Eastern. So I took my Eastern. I went to Eastern my freshman year. I watched my brother's final season in football and supported him and many of his playing buddies on my cafeteria dining card. But quickly, I realized Wazoo isn't too big, and I was visiting my girlfriends there every weekend. So I transferred my sophomore year. Still thinking I'm on a prerequisite journey only. I was still thinking I was eventually going to make it to UW. But then I decided to take a little break, and I moved to Maui. I scuba dove by day. I waitressed by night. I had a lot of fun. I was not terribly productive. I got my advanced diving certification while I was there, and after my 10 months of goofing off, it was time to focus again. So, once a Coug, always a Coug. I decided to forego the construction management degree and majored in business management. I just thought, what if I didn't like it? I thought a BA would be more marketable. That was a choice for me. Do I regret it? Slightly. Some classes would have been really nice to have, estimating and structures in particular, but I have learned most of my construction on the job. So when I graduated, I went back to work. I went to work for my dad full-time, or his business. It was a challenge. I was young, I was female, and I was the boss's daughter. So I was up for the challenge, and eventually it seemed to push me harder to prove myself. I learned I can be strong and smart and assertive, but always professional. Even though there were plenty of opportunities to give back to the catcallers or eye rollers, I honestly feel as a woman in the industry, I've never felt mistreated. More than 2 years after I graduated, I met up with my high school love, Mitch Cameron, who had moved to Yakima to open the Pro Golf Discount franchise. And we got married, and I moved to Yakima in 1995. I love Yakima. I have always loved and felt part of Eastern Washington. I worked remote out of our third bedroom for 3 years, and it became too much. We were pretty busy. I was running all of our Central Washington work, and I opened an office and ran our Eastern Washington office until 2012. There were plenty of rumors. There was one rumor I learned that someone said that I divorced Jerry Aldrich, I got the business in the divorce, and I married a golf pro. None of that happened. My experience has been primarily working with medical dental facilities until recently. I have a couple recent projects here in Yakima that have been thrilling. I love the variety of every project, and working with talented field personnel, architects, designers, engineers, owners. Many of you are here today. I started out with working for Wenatchee Valley Clinic in Wenatchee, of course, that turned out to be Wenatchee Valley Medical Center, and which is now Confluence. Columbia Valley Community Health in Wenatchee, Columbia Basin Health Association in Othello, Mattawa, and Connell, Yakima Valley Farm Workers Clinic and all their various sites, and Moses Lake Community Health as well in Moses Lake and Quincy. I learned quickly not to be afraid to self-perform work. My dad would design it. My brother, Mitch, and I would build it. We built did all the retaining walls and our pool house in our backyard. I enjoy talking to carpenters and tradesmen on the job and learn from them. I love asking questions, what is it that you're using? Why are you doing that? In 2012, I left the family business for various reasons and honestly wondered, what should I do? Didn't want to work for another GC. Enjoyed working with nonprofit organizations. I got calls from several of my existing clients that they still wanted me to run their work. I thought about it. I talked to Mitch. I talked to my dad, who is now fully retired. And I talked to clients and construction associates. And actually, I don't think Charlie's here, but Charlie Eglin was actually very monumental in my decision to go into business for myself. So on January 1st, 2013, I opened SKC Consulting, construction management consulting, owner's representation, and client advocacy. I love the prospect of taking stress of a project away from owners. They have their full-time jobs to do. I like the details in the organization and the daily minutia that most people don't like. So I'm proud to say that I'm still working with the same list of clients, and I have a couple new ones. I sidestepped with the YMCA Rotary Aquatic Center and most recently the Northwest Harvest Distribution Center. I initially joined Rotary in 2009 for networking and learning the business crowd. But since starting, SKC Rotary has become much more. I've enjoyed the community service project and the community chair work. The playground, of course, with Kelly was a thrill. The community projects, we did the Hearing and Speech Center with Nancy. We did here's some people. The South Community, the reading room was fun. I don't know if Dawn's here, but Dawn and I worked well together and enjoyed our community service projects. And there was a before and after. And then I did a small one. Dave Dion's year, there was some funds left over, and so we actually remodeled a little bit the Special Victims unit down at the YPD. Most recently, since I've been a consultant, Columbia Basin Health Association, this is a 78,000 square foot medical dental building. The executive director wanted to build the best CHC, Community Health Center, west of the Mississippi, and he did it. Here's their Rotary Yakima Rotary, Yakima YMCA and Rotary Aquatic Center. Enjoyed every minute of that with Bob, and I see that Keith is here today too. That was, I learned a lot. It was different from medical dental. It was a thrill, and I'm very proud of it, and made some great clients and friends. Moses Lake Community Health Center, we renovated that in multiple phases. Columbia Valley Community Health, this is in Chelan. Just 3 years later, we added on to it because they so quickly were meeting their need. Currently, I'm working in East Wenatchee. This is a project, substantial completion will be done June 30th. Of course, we have the Northwest Harvest Regional Distribution Center, which was also a thrill. I learned a lot about food distribution and packing and things I didn't know anything about. Of course, the Fruitvale Community Market. And recently, the West Valley Summit View Family Medicine project up on 56. I'm truly grateful to have a job I love. I look forward to working every day. I love my clients, and so many have become real friends. I am really grateful to live in Yakima. I love the life Mitch and I have created here. And Mitch is a successful business owner as well, opened the Yakima Pro Golf Discount franchise in 1992. He just sold it after 30 years, and he's now thrilled to be retired. Life is good, and I thank you for having me. I think pictures are better than the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, President Rick and fellow Rotarians, for allowing me to share a little bit about my personal history and my immigrating to the U.S. I'm an immigrant from a small town in the state of Nuevo León, Mexico, just outside of Monterrey, called General Bravo. We did not emigrate for economic reasons, as my father was one of the founders of General Bravo. He was the person responsible for petitioning the government to provide the first school teacher in our area. He and his associates were also responsible for getting electricity and getting up a water system. We had a large farm, a gasoline station, and a little beauty shop restaurant that my mother ran. Shortly after I was born, my parents decided that the current social pressures, family feuding, necessitated a move so that they could get a fresh start. So after working out the immigration details of our move to the U.S., we came in July of 1962. I was 2 months old. The only baby picture I have of myself is on my alien registration card, or better known as the green card. The whole kit and caboodle moved, which consisted of my parents and 7 children. My father purchased a brand new metallic blue Oldsmobile. All 9 of us piled in. We went to stay with my uncle in McAllen, Texas, and then made our way to California to our aunt in Modesto. And finally, after getting lost in Salem, Oregon, I would imagine it was pretty difficult, as there was no way for them to follow road signs in a foreign language. We made it to my uncle Ricardo's home in Toppenish, Washington. My parents had very little education. My mother went to the 5th grade, while my father only had a 3rd grade education. Nevertheless, what they lacked in education, they made up for with perseverance, self-reliance, and just hard work. They did not understand the language and soon ran out of money, so they took whatever work were offered to them and set their sights ahead of them towards the American dream. Our first home in the U.S. was in a migrant camp out in Natchez. I remember being able to look out through the knothole to the snowy ground outside. It was a very humble beginning, but my parents had already experienced success, and they had enough vision that they could once again enjoy the fruits of hard work and determination that fueled their success in Mexico. By the time I was 2 years old, my parents purchased a small one-bedroom home in Hera, across from the elementary school. My parents and older siblings all had worked hard in the fields, and every dollar that didn't go to food and shelter was saved for this purchase. My parents were very self-reliant. Dad would buy sheep, goats, and pigs from a local farmer at 5:30 in the morning, and before noon, the animal that had been purchased was butchered and wrapped and labeled and in the freezer. He also planted fruit trees of every kind and built a chicken coop behind the carport. We had a large vegetable garden, and food was preserved and stored to last through the winter season. Life was pretty good. My mother loved flowers, and her front yard was taking shape with roses and other blooms. Tragically, after my youngest sister was born, my father fell from the top of a 30-foot ladder while pruning apples. He broke his back in 3 places. He was brought home in a body cast and was pronounced disabled for life. Our family suffered a crushing blow as they scrambled to feed such a large family. But being the self-reliant people that they were, they put their heads together and decided that my mother would go into town to find a job as a cook in a restaurant. Let's see. Lost my place here. Give me a second. While the older children would continue to work in the fields. She was terrified of the opportunity because she could not speak English, but as Providence would have it, she found that the restaurant was in desperate need of a cook, and they immediately hired her. Soon, people that had worked with my dad learned that his wife was a pretty good cook, and soon she was offered a job running the restaurant at a local tavern. While working there, she met a couple that owned a small cafe across the street who wanted to retire. Mom and Dad purchased Tony's Cafe, changing the name to Ole Cafe, in Toppenish in 1967, just 5 years after moving to the U.S. By the time I was 8 years old, I was standing on a 5-gallon bucket washing dishes in bleach-filled soapy water after school and on weekends. We all worked in the family business, not for a paycheck, but for what you would call 3 square. We all had a part in the success of our family business, and Mother running the restaurant during the day, and Dad taking care of the janitorial duties of opening and closing and managing the finances. And being a house husband in between. Before I was 6, we purchased our second home, a large 5-bedroom home, and rented our little house in Hera. Soon they purchased more rental homes and had added a small taco shop here in Yakima, next door to what used to be the Lee Siemens men's shop. All total, Mother had 12 children, 4 of which died in infancy. I grew up with 6 sisters and 1 brother as number 11, and my youngest sister, Lisa, number 12, was born here at Memorial Hospital. Education was important to my father. He strongly encouraged us to get an education. One thing he would say to all of us was, "Don't be afraid. And if you want something, go get it." From my mother, we heard, "Don't drown in a cup of water." Great advice for a house full of estrogen. And he who does bad should never expect good to come of it, and many others that I hold dear today and share with my children. All of us went to college and are all hardworking, contributing members of society, all appreciative of the example of hard work, perseverance, and self-reliance from our parents and the blessings that have come from knowing a second language. We all assimilated into the American culture without letting go of our heritage and without professing victimhood. We all set our sights on our futures, armored with the skills and values instilled in us by our parents. Thank you so much for allowing me to share just a little bit about my heritage. And I look forward to working with the Rotary and being more involved in our community as our business gives back to Yakima. Thank you.
Okay, so I knew there was a story there. That was quite a story. Thank you, Mary. Thank you very much. In fact, thank all three of you for presenting today. And I guess that's one thing I regret as I listen to our three members, that we should do more classification talks. And I think Erin in the next year has that idea in her head to have more classification talks through the year. So I just want to thank each one of you. Great life stories, and kind of unbelievable in some cases. Thank you for taking the time to share with us. Well, we kind of had some serious presentations, and now we move to the maybe not so serious, and what we call the Rotarians' encounters with strange people. So, and who do you think would be the ones to present? Would Bob Romero and Ken Marble? I mean, really?
Everybody said they know this strange guy, so that's one for all of you. But and I can say I got to work with a rock star with Sonny Cameron working on the Y Project, and she is great at what she does. But I have a different story for you. It was late fall 1997, and I was in Vero Beach, Florida, home of the Los Angeles Dodgers, for Dodger Baseball Fantasy Camp. And I was standing in line with a friend of mine. We're fielding ground balls. We're going through drills at Fantasy Camp, and there's this guy in front of us, and somebody goes, "Hey, Joe, where do you call home?" And this guy turns and he goes, "Wherever I wake up." And I asked my friend, "Who is that derelict?" And he said, "Well, look on the back of his jersey." And it said Walsh. And I go, "What?" And he goes, "Joe Walsh. Eagles, Rocky Mountain Way, guitar." And I'm like, and so a couple minutes later, we're in line and doing drills, and he walks up to me and he says, "Hey, man, it's like magic. Every time the ball goes right into your glove. Can you show me how to do that?" And that's how I became the instructor who taught Joe Walsh how to field ground balls at Dodger Fantasy Camp. A couple of nights later, he decided to do a concert at camp for everybody. And so he did a concert, and he got up and he started playing, My Maserati does 185, and he stops and he goes, "I've actually never owned a Maserati." And then he says, "I lost my license, now I don't drive." And he said, "I did lose my license. I had 3 accidents in about 6 blocks." At the end of the week, he came up and thanked me and my buddy for treating him like one of the guys, and we had a great time, and that was my Joe Walsh experience. On my way back home, I stopped in the Denver airport, went in the Denver airport restroom, and ended up at a urinal right next to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, but that's a different story. Thank you.
Well, with apologies to Charles Dickens, I'm going to entitle my presentation "The Tale of Two Misperceptions." Bruce has asked us to share about our experiences with famous people, and I'm going to share about experience with 2 famous people. So who here thinks they're a pretty good judge of character when you first meet somebody? Most of you? And I think I would have thought that too, but as you'll see, that's not necessarily the case. The first experience happened 50 years ago on Memorial Weekend, 1973. I was between my 2nd and 3rd year of law school, and my girlfriend had worked for Lud Kramer, who was Secretary of State in Olympia. She was invited to attend a Republican retreat at Snoqualmie Pass and invited me to tag along, so I joined her up there. And this was back in the day when Republicans actually were elected to statewide offices. Attending the conference was Dan Evans, who was governor, Art Fletcher, Secretary of State, Slade Gorton, Attorney General, Lud Kramer. Probably Harry Hellison and I are the only 2 people who remember those names. But so there were a lot of congressional representatives and other elected officials. It was a lot of hot air and a lot of big egos in the room, but an interesting weekend. The conference was held in an old ski lodge, as I mentioned, at the top of Snoqualmie Pass. And other than my girlfriend, I didn't know a soul at this meeting. So getting dumped in with these elected officials was quite an experience, somewhat intimidating for a second-year law student. I went downstairs to the big, the lodge was divided in the basement, two big dormitories, one for men and one for women. And I went in, found a bed, threw my bag down on the bed, and there was a guy in the bed next to me who was about my age and looked like somebody I could relate to. So we struck up a conversation and hit it off. And he had worked on campaigns of several of the people that were upstairs. Throughout the weekend, he and I hung out together. We were young kind of outsiders at this conference. We would have sidebar conversations about the speakers and about the politicians there. He was witty, he was cynical, he was a lot of fun to kind of hang out with. And for the next 2 nights, we would sleep side by side in our beds. We even chatted before we went to sleep. And when the conference wound up, he suggested that we get together back in Seattle, maybe go out and hit the bars, and something which we never did. I never saw him again. But for that weekend, he was my new best friend. So over the next several years later, I'm picking up the newspaper, the Seattle Times, and here on the front page of the newspaper is my friend, Ted Bundy, serial killer. So I showed you, how skilled I was at evaluating people. I did enjoy them, but a chill went down my spine when I picked up that newspaper. So in defense of my poor read of character, I read that author Ann Rule, who wrote a book about Ted Bundy and who actually worked with him at a hotline call center, described him, and this was about the same time I knew him, as a kind, solicitous, and empathetic individual. So I wasn't the only one that was misled. My second story takes place in 1989 at a condo in Sun Valley, Idaho. I was a new member of a group of young business executives, primarily from the Seattle area. There were about 12 of us that sat in the living room of this condo around in a circle. None of us knew each other, and we shared about our backgrounds, who we were and a little bit about our businesses. And one of the guys across the table from me shared that he had sold coffee machines in New York City and now had 6 coffee shops in Seattle. And he said with an amazing commitment that he wanted to have coffee shops all around the world. Now, this was back in the day before there were coffee shops on every corner. And, you drank coffee in the break room, you drank coffee at home at the kitchen table. And I thought, man, I don't know what this guy's smoking. He's nuts. Coffee is the ultimate commodity. Doesn't he know that? How are you going to build a business model over something as simple and as much of a commodity as coffee? Well, our group went on, and we met once a month in Seattle. We shared business topics and issues, and as his business grew, I was struck by his commitment, his passion, absolute passion for excellence and for his employees. We became friends. In fact, I even invited him to Yakima, and he spoke at Yakima Rotary. Needless to say, once again, my first impression was way off the mark. Of course, I'm talking about Starbucks and Howard Schultz. So here's two good examples where I was a very poor judgment of people and first impressions, and I just encourage you to kind of look twice before you judge someone that you meet. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you, Ken. A little levity here at the end of the meeting. Thanks for sharing with us. I would like to, of course, thank our Rotarians who spoke to us today, Pete, Sonny, and Mary, for sharing your stories. I want to congratulate Terry and Jennifer for their, I think, outstanding award of generosity. Thank you very much. Next week, our program is Kyle Curtis, Pride in Yakima, also here. And the week after, Kim and Mark Helinsky, Helinsky's Hope. It's a foundation that they set up because of the loss of their son. I don't remember his first name, but he was it Tyler, who was bound to be a starting quarterback for WSU, and unfortunately took his own life. So they'll be talking about their efforts through that foundation. And after that, Addie Logson is going to talk about travel. And all three will be here at the Yakima Convention Center. And I think, Rick Pinnell, first citizen. Why don't you stand up? Can we clap for you again? Yeah, stand up. All right. On that note, we are adjourned.